8:19 p.m. I saw gushing through a torn tactical shirt as paramedics raced in an injured Navy SEAL, barely conscious as St. Ridge ER exploded. As the doctors pressed closer, yelling commands, the SEAL awoke. Fearful and wild, they refused to hold their hands. He kicked off the monitors and yelled, "Don't touch me!" Security even froze. There was no panic here, it was fighting mode. A new nurse walked forward, little, quiet, and unnoticed by everyone. Behind her back, the friendly interns made jokes. She ought not to have approached him at all. However, she did, and only 3 men on Earth were aware of the 6 silent sentences she murmured. The SEAL went cold. His face lost all of its anger. "Ma'am, is that really you?" he muttered nervously as he carefully eased himself back into the bed. In an instant, the whole emergency room discovered that the rookie nurse they had dismissed was the only reason his unit had ever survived. Before we start, take a moment to press subscribe and leave a comment about where you're viewing. It really does keep these tales alive. I'm grateful. Let's head back to St. Ridge now. 8:19 p.m. wasn't meant to be a chaotic situation. It wasn't meant to be blood, ripped equipment, or the cry a man makes when memory and anguish collide. Tonight, however, the automated emergency room doors sprang open as paramedics yelled over a red-dripping gurney. Half conscious and half prepared to fight another battle, a Navy SEAL, recognized only by the faint trident patch, gasped against the oxygen mask while still clutching to his torn tactical shirt. Cardio guarded, BP unstable, GSW enter shoulder and exit flank. Codes, statistics, and a language that laymen seldom comprehended were shaken by paramedics. Doctors, however, did not hear. Every resident surgeon now wanted to be the hero after seeing the outfit, the combat tattoos, and the scars. Put a clamp on it. He needs a trauma bay, prep or not. Get moving. He was sedated by someone. The SEAL awoke, not bewildered, untrained, or drugged. With a howl that rattled the antiseptic walls, he pushed the oxygen away. "Keep your hands off of me." The monitors fell to the ground. A tile was struck by an Roman 4 pole. Security ran, mid-shift lunch still in hand. "This man is dangerous," said one doctor. The SEAL was blind to them, though. "No soldier wakes up like that unless he's burned by memories." They circled him. White coats, latex gloves, arrogance. Something was blazing in the distance, buried in the sand, and he could see it with night vision. Through static, a radio code was spoken. With his teeth clenched so tightly that a vein pulsed down his neck, he kicked off the compression straps. Security is required, no limitations. Combat psychosis is what he is. Take a step back, and everyone did for a while. Another vet with trauma. "Someone call psych." A resident mumbled, "Wild dog training, standard military." They believed themselves to be silent. Every syllable was heard by him. The room then moved. A nurse entered without anybody noticing. Rookie badge, blonde hair in a plain bun, not a surgeon, not a command, not decorated. Soft presence, soft speech, soft face, the kind the ER spit out after chewing. Lena Ward, holding a tray of painkillers and nothing more menacing. The whirlwind of physicians debating about policy didn't even seem to amaze her. She didn't flinch or respond. She simply moved into the center of it. "Get out of there, Ward. You're not cleared for combative trauma, huh?" This is not a case involving students. None of them caught her attention. She gave him a glance. The SEAL's chest heaved. His cheek was smeared with war paint from perspiration. His hand moved in the direction of a weapon. Lana did not retreat. "A linguistic fingerprint associated with a single classified unit," she said. 6 syllables, quiet, precise, deadly accurate. Every physician, nurse, and security guard stopped, not because they understood what he was saying, but rather because he did. The SEAL froze, his shoulders falling and his fingers loosening. His eyes lost their battle glaze. He slid himself back into the gurney slowly and impossibly, his eyes fixed on hers and his chin quivering. Doc Ward," he murmured. In the pause between them, the name broke. Whispers burst open like a flood. "You, it's really you, Doc Ward. Isn't she simply a nurse?" "What is going on at the moment?" Heat crawled up Lena's neck, not shame, recognition, recall, not wanted, not buried. Her wrist was reached for by the SEAL, not aggressive. "Thank you." "You saved us," he said in a tremulous voice. The doctors looked at each other. Not from pain, but reverence. What did they just witness? Security appeared ashamed to be using zip ties and tasers on a man who had just given a nurse an eye salute. Lena took a gulp. When she used it, her voice was hardly audible above a breath. Avoid doing that. Not in this place. However, he did. Despite his wounded flank, he straightened his posture and gave her a salute. Not debt, recognition, or military formality, too much history to say aloud. The residents gazed as if the floor had been opened. Did he just salute a nurse? Someone whispered, but he wasn't finished. He let his hand fall, trembling. It's memory, not harm. His eyes gleamed as he murmured, "Ma'am, did anybody else make it out?" Like smoke, the question hovered. Lena remained silent, not able to. Once her heart thudded. The names of Fala's damaged radio were removed from rosters. She was unable to save 3 bodies. The room was unaware of what they had just entered. They believed this to be an instance of trauma. It wasn't. It was a resurrection. Dr. Reeves, the haughty spine of the emergency room, sneered loudly enough for everyone to hear behind her. "Sergeant, there's no need for this theatrics. You're stunned. Move aside, Nurse Ward." However, the SEAL turned to face him, tears replaced by ice. He rasped, "You even touch me before she clears it." "I'll leave bleeding." Reeves became pale, as there was no danger here. This soldier was expressing a firm belief. Lena didn't back down, boast, or correct anyone. Even Dr. Reeves became quiet when she simply asked, "Let me see the wound." After removing the damp gauze and giving herself a quick glance, all of the color vanished from her face. It wasn't the wound. It was the method used, where the angle is positioned. She identified the ambush technique, the unit tactic, and the signature. It was used by only one group. It was only categorized by one mission. It was wiped by a single file. She spoke a barely heard murmur. No, not once again. The SEAL's gaze expanded. "You remember," he responded, knowing without asking. She gave a nod. "Once. Not rookie, not trainee, not sweet ward who works late shifts. Ghost of a medic who was never supposed to survive." The room's chaos dimmed. No beeping monitors, no barking surgeons, no rustling scrubs, just truth finally unmasked. The SEAL leaned closer, voice cracking. "Lena, who else survived?" She opened her mouth, her past, pressing against her ribs like shrapnel. But before she could answer, the injured SEAL suddenly arched, gasping hard. Monitors spiked, blood surged, alarms blared, and the ER snapped back alive. Vitals crashing. Code trauma. Get respiratory now. Lena grabbed gauze, pressure, assessment all at once, muscle memory from a life she buried. But as she anchored his pulse, hands steady, eyes locked on his, she knew exactly what the next words would be. Words she never wanted to hear again. Reeves shouted them. "He's losing pressure. He will lose his arm if we don't access that shoulder artery." The SEAL fixed onto her waning gaze, pleading through anguish. "Ma'am, please don't let them take my arm." All eyes turned to her, as if suddenly realizing that she was the only person he trusted to rescue it. The SEAL lay on the bed. No straps, no restraints, just breathing hard, eyes locked on the one person who could keep him from spiraling again. Lena Ward. She stood beside him, hands clasped loosely, posture quiet enough to disappear, steady enough to hold the entire room in place. Nobody dared speak, not after what they just witnessed. A man trained to endure interrogation, capture, dehydration, starvation, blood loss, unraveled by the touch of highly paid surgeons, but calmed by 6 whispered syllables from a nurse they barely noticed. "Doctor." Harper cleared his throat first, the sound clipped, embarrassed, still trying to hold on to authority. "Whatever code word you used, Nurse Ward," he muttered. "It doesn't change the fact that he needs surgical clearance. He has ballistic trauma." "Internal, not ballistic," Lena said softly, every head turned. "He was hit by concussive mortar debris, fragmentation, not a direct projectile. That's why the bleed pattern is lateral instead of deep." Harper blinked. Excuse me, but how would you know that?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to because the SEAL did. "In Mosul," he rasped, voice raw but proud. "Doc Ward was the one who patched half the unit after we got hit at the comms tower. She didn't need scans then, either. She read wounds the way some generals read maps." The word doc struck the room with a fist. "Not a doctor. Not a nurse, not a rookie, not an intern, not a quiet girl. Harper took a step back now, his spine bowing in uncertainty. However, Lena did not display any pride, no indication of satisfaction or a higher stance. She just made moderate, well-practiced adjustments to the SEAL's Roman 4. "Your vitals are stabilizing," she whispered to him. He clenched his jaw. The monitors behind him beeped regularly as he said, "My vitals stabilize when you tell them to, same as before." Obedient yet not flawless. After giving a single nod, she turned to go back into the background as usual. Suddenly, though, the SEAL stretched out and wrapped its fingers around her wrist, not with force but with familiarity. "Please don't leave this time." The room remained still. It was remembrance, not terror, that made Lena gasp. She had old radio attic in her ears and old sand in her lungs. High-lows hovered overhead with nowhere to land, the heartbeat of a field medic against a dirt floor. Dr. Harper attempted to speak out once again. "Look, we still need whatever field history you two have in common." No, the SEAL broke. His voice was full of fury again. "She is essential to you. She is not in need of you." There were a few gasps. That is not how you communicate with the chief trauma surgeon. He wasn't speaking as a patient, though. As a guy who had witnessed Lena Ward lie herself across an injured comrade as artillery struck so near that the earth beneath her knees trembled, he was speaking. Gently, Lena let go of his hold on her wrist. "You never did," he muttered. "I'm here, I just don't do command posts anymore." Harper was silent as he said, "You just kept us alive when command forgot we existed." A young inhabitant murmured next to the supply cart. Lena faked a faint grin and said, "She's not really a rookie, is she?" When the SEAL said, "I left that world behind, I left him behind." His eyes softened, not with sympathy, but with the reverence that men etch on memorial stones. "Lena, he died a hero. Your failure did not lead your companion to collapse." "Stop," she muttered. And Harper, the residents, and even security recognized for the first time that this wasn't a fiction she made up to get attention. It was a wound, a cut more deep than the gurneys. The SEAL relaxed, his voice laced with anguish. "When the intelligence reported that all medics were killed that night, I believed they were mistaken. I hoped they were mistaken. As it happens, they were." Lena took a step back without responding, fearing that if she spoke, all the bricks she had built between her heart and her history would fall apart. Harper cleared his throat, feeling control slipping once more. "I need to know exactly what that code indicates, since we need imaging right immediately. It implies that I'm not just a name on a wall because of her." According to the SEAL, the individual who pulled 6 of us through wreckage and gunfire wasn't a captain or a SEAL when the backup convoy was 22 miles off route. Communications went down, and command realized we would be encircled. His gaze strayed to Lena. She was our ghost medic, meaning she had neither an evacuation window nor an extraction clearance. Even God turned away, but she stayed. Nobody made a move. The ventilators even stopped in awe. Harper took a hard gulp. "And her partner?" The SEAL responded as she was unable to. "When they started shooting at our evac point, he protected her." Still upright, he shoved her beyond the final wall. With her jaw clenched and her sun-colored hair cascading forward like a curtain, Lena gazed at the ground. Harper was immediately devastated, as though the equilibrium between conceit and modesty had just been severely upset inside of him. "I didn't know. You weren't supposed to," Lena muttered as she eventually raised her head. "I left for that reason. I don't dispute people when they label myself a rookie because of this." The room shattered, but not her voice. With caution and without her consent, the SEAL sought for her hand once again. "If they made it through that night," he added softly, "you are the reason they survived." She gave a headshake. "No, they perished as a result of my inability to halt anything. Some of us were able to return home because you halted enough of it. Don't change the battlefield." The heart monitor beeped rhythmically, quieter now, and the reality was beginning to sink in instead of a catastrophe. Harper let out a slow breath. "I want you to help in his rebuilding, as whatever designation you obtained over there, not as a nurse." Lena blinked. Years ago, she packed all of her medals, patches, ranks, and titles into a box under her bed. She did not give a nod. She didn't grin. She just said, "I'll do what I've always done. I'll keep him alive." At last, Harper moved aside, keeping an eye on things rather than taking the lead because the position of leadership had just shifted. As mortars thundered too near, Lena turned back to the seal and pushed his hair away from his wet forehead like someone who had done it to a field cod. "You're stable," she whispered. He nodded and said, "You're safe," but his hand was still barely on hers, just enough to convey, "Don't disappear again." She remained until his breathing stabilized and the monitors joined him in exhaling. She remained till the trauma hall regained the ability to walk fearlessly. She didn't take a step back till then. And everyone in the emergency room turned to stare at her as she got to the doorway. Now, with reverence rather than astonishment or bewilderment, no more inexperience, no more neglected nurses. The gentle background girl is gone. Only Lena Ward, the physician who survived, the living medic. The healer who transported spirits to spare others. At the doorway, she hesitated. Harper was the first to whisper the words. "The voice is weak. Without understanding your conflict, we pass judgment on you." Lena didn't look back. "Never judge a uniform or the silence that follows it." She remarked simply, "If you think silent heroes should be recognized, please leave a comment below. Never pass judgment." After the code was revealed, the audience fell into an odd, respectful silence. However, Lena Ward didn't feel at ease in this time. With her arms erect at her sides and her nails digging into her hands to regulate her own heartbeat, she stood close to the foot of the bed. Just moments before, Navy SEAL Captain Ali had been half-conscious, battle-hard, blood-dry, and keen. Now he gazed at her with the type of recognition one only exhibits when they encounter a ghost. But she was the ghost. Ali's breathing had evened out, but his gaze remained fixed on her. He said, "They told me you didn't make it out." "It's so quiet the surgeons didn't hear it over the machine beeps. They told us no one did." Lena held the chart a little tighter, jaw working, throat burning with answers she didn't know anyone. Not here, not tonight. Not in a brightly lit ER with interns staring like they just watched the floor drop open. Across the room, Dr. Ellison cleared his throat. Loud, defensive, rattled. "Captain Sharp, we need to continue assessing your neurological response." Nurse Ward stepped back. Ellie didn't even blink at him. "She stays." It wasn't a growl, it wasn't a plea, it was an order. One Ellison was not accustomed to receiving from anyone in scrubs. Lena didn't move closer, but she didn't step back either. Ellison tried again. "Sir, she's not cleared to. She's my medic." Ellie cut in voice, but absolute. Stamped in blood, sand, and classified ink. "If your team wants me conscious, she stays in this room." The heartbeat monitor ticked steadily, but the ER's energy shifted again. Less panic, more curiosity, awe, maybe something like guilt. The residents started whispering among themselves, the same ones who had laughed when Lena tripped over the supply cart last week, who called her quiet mouse when she didn't bark orders like the others. Now they couldn't even look her in the eye. Lena didn't want their awe. She didn't want their apologies. She wanted to breathe without the invisible desert dust crushing her ribs. Ali watched her, head slightly tilted, breathing shallow. "You're shaking," he said quietly. She wasn't, not visibly, but he saw it anyway. He'd always seen more than he claimed. "I just need to update your chart," she said in a steady voice. "You're deflecting," he replied equally steadily. The room faded, and for a split second, Lena was back in that blown-out limestone corridor. Night burning, copper in her mouth, hands cramping as she applied pressure to his thoracic bleed, praying that the command wasn't mistaken about the extraction time.